Hi, folks. Steve Urban here, host of the Riderflex podcast and founder and CEO of our day job recruiting firm, Riderflex. We hope you enjoy this episode. And as a reminder, please subscribe to the podcast for updates and news. If you haven't already, check out the series of books we've published on hiring, interviewing, and overall career advice titled The Riderflex Guide. And finally, today's episode is brought to you by Class 6 Partners. Are you ready to sell your business or raise capital? Class 6 Partners guides you through the entire process, from business optimization to securing the perfect deal. With over $3 billion in transactions, they turn your business dreams into reality. Visit class6partners.com to start your journey today. So, Tom, let's see. It's October, what is it? 15th, right?
Yep. Payday.
You're in, right? Yeah. Wouldn't today's the extension tax deal, right? I actually I didn't extend this year,
Right.
but
That's right. That's right.
uh, how's that? Well, I guess you're in New York, right? Or
Well,
somewhere?
I'm in Providence, Rhode Island today, but
Oh,
we are in our offices are in New York City and Providence. Yep. So I'm back and forth.
okay. Is it cool? Is it fall weather? What's
All
it feel
right.
like?
So, well, where are you based?
I'm in Colorado.
Okay, so New England. I'm not sure if it's a Colorado thing, but we're in the time of year where the New
Yeah.
Englanders are basically daring each other. Like, who you put your heat on yet? Put your heat on yet? Because I didn't. And I'm sleeping with the window crack open, which is just the best, you know. But it's that time of year where it gets down to like the 40s at night, and then like right now it's probably 67 or something like that by like peak sunshine. But like, yeah, we're in that season, man, where it's starting to feel cold. The jackets are coming out. I'm loving it.
Yeah. Yeah. I lived in Connecticut for 3 years doing a job, and then I traveled to DC, which is not quite the same, obviously, but I traveled to DC for 3 years. So I'm, familiar with the Northeast in the fall, and it's beautiful for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know,
It's a fun time. It's a fun time. It's also funny. I have a funny like one of my really good friends. Fall is his favorite time of year, and he was telling me why. And it was like the jackets and the apple picking and all that. And then he's like, "Well, it's really because my parents were teachers growing up, and the fall was like that was like the end of their summer break when they had to go back to school
I see.
because they were basically like the kids all freaking out about the end of summer. His parents were
I
doing that
got
too."
you. Where are you from originally?
I'm from the Providence, Rhode Island area. I grew up in a town called Fall River, Mass. So I live in the part of Massachusetts and Rhode Island where you're basically crisscrossing between the state like multiple times a day, right? I'm like right on the border. So I grew up in Fall River, Mass. I right now I live in Providence, Rhode Island, but I do a lot of my like just grocery shopping and stuff in Seacock, Massachusetts. It's one of those things where I'm literally going back and forth. But I grew up in Fall River, which is a town that I like to say it's one of those towns that had its heyday in the 90s. And by that, I mean the 1890s when, manufacturing was a thing. And we had these really big mills and those shut down. And, like a lot of cities in the Northeast, at least, sort of went into decline after that. But
Yeah.
is starting to actually kind of come back up now with like, there's a lot of kind of cool like restaurants and bars opening up. And so it's been interesting. But yeah, that's where I'm from.
What's it take an hour to drive across Rhode Island? I mean, how long does it take to get across the state? An hour?
Well, like the joke in Rhode Island is that you're 20 minutes from everything and that everybody knows each other. And to a certain extent, those things are true.
Is it? Okay. All right.
Yes.
Are your folks and everybody still around there?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I've got my mom's here. I mean, I went to school here my whole life. So it's actually my neighbor two doors down is my best friend from third grade. So that's pretty
That's pretty
cool.
cool. That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, 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 yeah.
What'd your folks do?
My dad was an electrical contractor, so which is interesting for this conversation because he ran his own business his entire life. My
I see.
mom, my mom was a stay-at-home mom for a while, but then when we got to a certain age, she started working in retail at the Gap at the mall, and then opened up her own store at a certain point. But
Oh,
yeah, my
cool.
dad, yeah, so both my parents like started businesses, and it's one of those things where I never even thought about it until way later in life. I was like, oh my God. I was having a conversation with my dad who's passed away now, and it was just like, man, he's an electrician, right? And like I have a branding company, and it's like you think that there's no you think there's no common ground, and yet we had so much to talk about, like just about running a business and having
Right.
employees and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because my brother and sister went into like into careers where they're working for somebody else, and obviously they were able to connect with my dad on different things, but this was something really unique about our relationship, which is
So
pretty
you were
cool.
the only sibling that started a business.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
And,
I
and by
mean,
the way, and by the way, taking over the electrical business was never an option. He told us like flat out. He's like, "I'm sending you guys to college, and this business dies with me. Like, you're not becoming electricians." We are like, "Okay."
yeah. Well, back in the 80s and early 90s, that was a smart plan. Now,
Now, yes, now,
now 2024, the
I
electricians and the plumbers and the HVAC guys, he didn't,
I couldn't
there was,
honestly, I couldn't agree with you more. I think the trades are more attractive. Honestly, they're a more attractive, like more just sensible option these days than
yeah,
they have been in the past. So I agree with you
totally.
100%.
There was an article in the Wall Street Journal this week. I can't remember the exact headline, but it was basically plumbers and HVAC guys, the new millionaires, or something like that, or whatever.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? But it's like yeah,
Yeah.
it makes sense. And
Oh,
honestly, it's like you've got a technical skill, which is something that is it's not that common these days, right? In the
right. Yep.
information
Exactly.
economy.
Exactly. Well, how did a history major turn into a marketing entrepreneur? Tell me.
Okay. All right. So I graduated high school in '96, got to college the same year. I was actually young enough, just the way my birthday falls, that I moved into college when I was 17. I was
Oh,
18 a
oh,
couple days later, but
okay.
um, and so we're talking late '90s, '96 to 2000 is when I was in college. And
Mm.
this is really when like the internet was exploding, right? Like my freshman year, we didn't have computers in our rooms, we didn't have internet. I had to go to a lab to check my email, and I had to put in Unix commands to do it. And then like really quickly it became, all of a sudden Netscape and Internet Explorer were out, and all of a sudden like Amazon was this thing. And it was all happening really fast. And I remember just being aware of it. But then taking at Fordham is where I went to Fordham University. We had to take electives, and I went in as a history major just because I loved history. I love American history, and I had no idea what I was going to do with it. I was like, literally, was like, I don't know, maybe I'll work in a museum. And I took an elective called Intro to HTML just because I had to. Not that I had to take that one, but I had to take an elective, and that one looked interesting. And like my mind was blown. I literally was like, "This is." You have to remember, and I can tell by the gray in your beard and your best grandpa mug that you will understand this. But um, I basically was able to like I taught my I learned HTML, and then I was able to create something on like I had a work study, so I was able to create a website on that computer,
Okay.
upload it to a server, then go to the library, totally different computer, and call that up and see it. And I was like,
You're like,
it was
wow,
mind blowing. Of it,
wow.
do you remember at the time like
Oh yeah.
that was crazy? And
Oh,
then
for
and
sure.
then I could change it. Remember, it was like, oh well, if I mess something up or I want to update it, I can just change it and it'll be changed everywhere. I was like, I'm doing this. I'm whatever this is, I'm doing it. And so Fordham didn't offer. There was no such thing as like a website design and development major. I mean, that was just it was too early, right? And
Yeah,
so what I did was, and computer science at the time was like hardcore comp sci. It wasn't
that's
like
right. Yeah.
website stuff. So I basically pieced together my own major. I switched to communications. And then the communications department offered a bunch of creative computer classes, right? So I took like Adobe, Photoshop, Illustrator, anything I could do that was like digital creative. And I graduated as a comms major, and I kept my history minor. But I graduated school with a technical skill. I knew HTML, and it was like it
I
was
see.
amazing.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
And were you a good kid, by the way? I mean, teenager, were you a rebel or what were you like in high school and college? A little bit of partying, casual, or
Oh, I'm recovering from my partying path. I'd say like I started early just as like, I mean, I was a skater kid. I like listened to
Were you?
punk rock
Okay.
and
All right.
yeah, and like, wore clothes from the Salvation Army that my parents like would wanted to kill me when I was going to school.
Because you thought it was cool.
Um, yeah, I mean, I just didn't want to dress like everybody else, and I just wanted to do my own thing. And
Branding. See,
um,
you were branding way back then.
yeah, yeah. And then I was also like I was always up for trouble, I mean, not like serious trouble, but I was just, I liked to party, I liked to go to concerts, I liked to skate. And that definitely continued through college, and it maybe even continued. I mean, actually, my first not my first job, but my second job out of college was at a magazine, which was a men's magazine. So it was. Do you remember those like
Huh?
Maxim and
Yeah.
FHM? And
Yeah.
so I basically like had an extended college, even after I graduated. For like 5 more years, I was basically working in a frat house. So I've since calmed down, but yeah, it was
Uh,
wild.
and when you were working there, that's back before HR had so many rules that you couldn't do anything, right? Back then, it's like, yeah, there wasn't. I mean, there was HR, but
It was the
different.
Wild West. It
Yes.
was the Wild West. We had a tiki bar in our just in our office. It was unbelievable the things that at the time I was in my 20s and I thought like, whoa, okay, this is crazy, but it's not anything too crazy. And now it's like, yeah, that I can't believe that was a
Oh,
functioning
I, I,
workplace.
I think back about some of the stuff we would do at work in the early '90s, and it's just, yeah.
It's like, no.
Wow. There's so many times I probably should have been fired or would have been fired in today's world for sure.
Oh man, I got to tell you, now that you're saying that, I actually remember. This is funny. My first job was at Ziff Davis, which was a publishing company, and I worked there. And my boss called me and my coworker in one day, um, and he's like, "Hey guys, can you come in here for a second?" And then he dialed his messages, and then he played a message that we had left for him the night before. We'd been drinking. We were like, "Oh,
Because this is back when voicemail. Yeah, everybody you'd leave a voicemail for your boss. Yeah, right.
it's just like he just called us in and just put it on speakerphone and dialed it. It was just like, thanks for that, guys. But next time I don't think I need a call.
I actually got in trouble for doing that one time too. We used to impersonate my boss a little bit because he had this unique sound and voice. And so we would always, if, and for the listeners, by the way, for people that don't know, especially the younger generation. So before email started dominating the planet, most companies had a voicemail kind of system. You would
Right.
dial into the corporate number and then you would leave your colleagues and your boss's voicemail. So everybody would call in to check their voicemail. It was very common, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
yeah, I got in trouble for the same thing. We'd always impersonate him. And so what we do is we would make a recording like we were him and we'd send it to each other, goofing off a
Yeah,
little bit.
yeah, yeah.
And one day I actually sent it to him by accident.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. One more good one was this. Okay, so back, you also remember before email was dominating the world, that sometimes in the workplace, memos were delivered just like at your desk, or like, you'd walk in the morning and there'd be a memo on your chair. Do
Right.
you remember that?
Yeah.
So one day we wrote a memo from our CEO telling everybody that just another random guy on my team was now responsible for IT. We were like, oh yeah, John, if you have any, we're really proud to announce
And
that John is now
everybody's like, what the fuck? Like, what?
no, this guy
John.
was freaking. This guy was freaking out. He was reading it just like, someone told me about this,
That is
and it
so
was like,
good.
yeah, impersonating the CEO, that'll get you into trouble these days.
Right? I always tell, and we can move off the subject, but I always kind of give my HR friends a hard time. I'm like, HR and lawyers have made it really boring. Like it actually work used to be a lot more fun. You
Yeah.
guys have made it boring. Anyway, all right. So you're moving along on your early career. Were you thinking, yeah, this is cool, but I want to be an entrepreneur, or how did that happen exactly? Yeah.
No, no, not at all. Honestly, it's funny. Like I said before, it wasn't until later that I realized I was like, oh, my dad's an entrepreneur. I never even thought of him as that. And then I'm like, I guess I am too, and there's something inside of me. But
Okay.
no, I mean, I loved my magazine. I loved it. I was like,
Okay.
I was going to be a magazine guy.
All right.
I was on the trajectory. I worked, well, at first I worked on the digital side. And then I actually, when I was at FHM, that men's magazine, I started also working on the content side. So I was a writer and editor, and I ended up interviewing a bunch of really interesting people. And like some of them were my heroes. Like I was a skater kid, like I said. So I interviewed Tony Hawk for
Cool.
his video game and like,
Cool.
yeah, just like other, it was just like, it was cool. It was fun, right? Um, and then, this was when the internet was, okay, so I worked there until the end of '06, and between 2000 and 2006, the internet really really exploded, and it was like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
our magazine was on a 3 month lead time, which meant that like you couldn't be breaking news anymore, and you couldn't really be like, our magazine was also, that magazine was like, hey, here's really funny, interesting, weird stuff and people from around the world, and we've gone and interviewed them, or we're showing you pictures of them. By the time the internet was getting just scaling, that stuff like was no longer a novelty anymore. It was like,
Yeah.
yeah, I saw this online 3 months ago. So
Yeah.
we had to like, so just like, it wasn't just us, the whole industry really had to rethink what magazines were for, right? And they were like more for
Yes.
service, right? It was more, magazines had to be more about service than breaking news or anything
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that.
But yeah, exactly.
And as a result, there was just a big, just sort of, it just, there was a big thinning out of the field, right? Like magazines
Mm-hmm.
were closing, and my category, the men's category, got hit first, which was actually fortunate, because we found ourselves in the job market about a year before everybody else in the magazine industry. But that was just that time, '07, '08, when just like
Oh,
every week you'd read about something closing, right?
yeah.
They were just closing, closing, closing. Um, and so my story was, I loved this magazine. I wanted to work there. When I got out, I was like, well, I'm a writer now, so I'm going to be a freelance writer. And I had
Okay.
plenty of contacts in the industry. And so
Okay.
I did put together a little bit of a freelance writing career where I was writing for Popular Science. I wrote some stuff for WWE. I was writing for Wired, Maxim, Men's Journal. But it was really, really hard to make a living at. It was like I had to spend days putting together pitches, writing them perfectly to these editors at these magazines, who I knew, by the way, only to have my emails just totally ignored and unanswered. Or if they did answer them, they wanted to pay me very little for a lot of work, which was just
And
kind of the
let's
standard.
and what was your personal
Yeah.
situation at the time? Were you single, married, kids, anything?
Yeah, I was in a relationship, but like it was living with somebody, but not, we weren't married yet,
Okay. Okay.
and so
Okay.
and so
Okay.
she had a salary, but we were living in New York City, so I had to make a living, you
she's
know.
like she's like, hey, Tom, you're cool, but you need to like pay half.
Yeah, 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 yeah. If you want this, if you want this side of the bed, you got to chip in, buddy. Yeah, so it was pretty. That was scary, and that was about a time when in my life when I was trying to give this freelance writing thing a go, but I also had people kind of reaching out to me, being like, "Did you used to do websites, and didn't you used to do
There
logos
we
and
go.
stuff?"
There it is. There it is.
That
Okay.
was the moment where I just started taking those on. And so I was doing this thing where I was, okay, I had some writing gigs, but I'm also working on some
Okay.
websites.
All
And
right.
then, and then at one point it just dawned on me. It was just one of those things where I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I can't, I, well, it was two things. One was writing. I can't make a living writing. I'm never going to be, I'm a utility writer, right? I'm the guy who can write an entire front of the book of a magazine, but I'm not one of the guys that has his name on the cover, right? Like interview by Tom Conlon. Like I'm never going to be one of those like highly paid
Okay.
celebrity
All right.
sort of writers. And and so just I started thinking about my work week and my future. I'm like, well, I don't think a freelance writer thing is for me. And if I think about my work week, 40 hours minimum, it's like the time I'm spending on this website and logo stuff, this is actually paying me. It's this is what's paying my bills. And I can spend way less time on it and be more efficient, which means if I just filled my whole week up with this stuff, I'd
Okay.
be doing better. And that was really like the first moment where I was like, okay, I think I'm going to do this instead of trying to do both or doing writing. And then the second moment came fairly soon after, I'd say within a year of just freelancing, which was that I started to pick up some steam. And, this was just all work by referral, right? Just people just being like, oh, you should call
Yeah.
Tom. And I got to a point where I was starting to be asked to do projects that were either one, like above my pay grade, meaning like I was a serviceable designer and developer. I'd say I was pretty good, but like I wasn't amazing. But some of the projects I was bidding on or talking to people about really required some like real high design skill and real deep chop. And so that's when I was like, maybe I can do this project, but like do parts of it and manage it. And that was really that was probably '08. That was probably the beginning of that was the very beginning of my company. And that was very small and experimental where I was like, wasn't even starting a company at that point. I was just freelancing and like hiring other. I was a general contractor hiring other contractors.
Subcontractor.
Now,
Yeah. And by the
yep,
way, and '08 wasn't like the best time to start a company.
the worst time, right? The absolute worst time. I
Uh,
didn't really know that at the time. It's only in hindsight that I'm like, wow, I can't believe that actually happened.
uh,
And then that was it. I mean, and then all of a sudden I partnered with someone for a little bit, and we can get into that territory if you want. It was a partnership that really helped me start the business. She ended up
okay.
leaving 3 years later, but
Okay.
like I partnered with another designer who had just different skills, and that was just the two of us in a co-working space. And then we started hiring, freelancers who came into the office, and then, I mean, eventually that became our first full-time employee, and then it was 3 employees, a lease, all that sort of stuff. So that was, I mean, it really began organically, and I never intended to start a business. And I just, but at the same time, I had trouble reconciling the idea of me working for somebody else as well, because I really had like poured my blood, sweat, and tears into that magazine, and it was shut down one day, right? Like we walked into work,
Yeah.
they called us to the conference room around the holidays, which is
Yeah.
never a good thing, and they
Uh,
just closed us. And so I was really like, I was kind of like, I'm not sure what my next move is. I'm like, I'm not
right.
sure. Yeah.
Was it North Street in the beginning, or have you rebranded a few times? What was it called early on?
No, it's funny. It was called North Street in the beginning. My partner at the time, the two of us like walked into a conference room with a whiteboard and just wrote down a bunch of possible names. And um, it's funny. I think hers was North Star and mine was Art Street.
Is
I
this
was
the first
like
partner or the second partner?
first partner.
Okay.
So she was like, yeah, we just chose different name. We circled different words and it was like, what about North Street? And that was it. And then funny, the logo that we have a logo. Obviously our logo is an original piece of artwork, but at first it wasn't. I just found some piece of stock art of like a bowler hat that I liked, and we were using that temporarily on proposals. We just because we needed something. And then I was like, actually, I really like this hat. We started going into all different directions of like, I don't know, row houses and stuff like that for North
Yeah,
Street,
I see.
street signs. And then I was like, I really like this hat. So we kept it and we ended up like redrawing it and creating it as like an original piece of art. But that's the story of the brand. I tell people now, by the way, Steve, I will tell people in certain contexts. They're like, what does North Street mean? I'll say something like, it's a callback to the old artisanal kind of home factory nature of turn of the century New York City.
Okay.
But really it was just a sort of random combination of words.
Yeah, but yeah, I'd stick with the story's good. I would just stick with that. Uh, so did you guys like have an operating agreement and a cap table? Or did you get all fancy, or were you just kind of winging it with that first partner?
No,
And I'm
we
and
did.
I'm and I'm
Yeah,
and I'm
go ahead.
asking this question because this is where we can get into some advice and tips for people
Sure.
thinking about doing it and mistakes you might have made or things you wish you would have done differently, etc. Yeah. So how
Yep.
did you that first arrangement? What was that? Were you just kind of winging it, or what were you doing?
No, we did get a partnership agreement going. And it's funny, I sat on it for a long time. I just like I didn't really even look at it, and all of a sudden she kept reminding me to sign it and sign it and sign it. And
Okay.
finally I signed it one day, and then a month later she was like, I think I'm gonna leave the company. I was like, oh,
Was there okay, let's talk, let's give some advice to listeners here. Were there some clauses in there that say, hey, I'm clawing back I'm clawing back whatever equity you thought you had. You didn't just let her just walk away with that, did you?
no, I'll tell you what. I really wish I had understood operating agreements at the time. I just didn't. You know what I mean? And like, here's the thing too. Our relationship. And by the way, I'm friendly with my ex partner now. We kind of had a little bit of a rough
Yeah.
time, just sort of
Of
at the
course. Of
separation,
course.
but
Of
we're
course.
but we're actually really good now.
Was it also, well, by the way, was it also personal?
No,
Okay.
no, no, no,
All right. All right.
no, no,
All
no,
right. All
no.
right.
It
Anyway, go
wasn't.
ahead. Go ahead. We're going deep.
Um,
We're going deep here, Tom.
yeah, yeah, all good, all good.
So
Um,
anyway, yeah, you
no,
tell the
no. I
listener
mean, I
tell the listeners what you learned there. Yeah, about the about the agreement. Go ahead.
well, I mean, I didn't really have an understanding of equity and and all of that. So she comes to me and she's like, "Hey, I wanna essentially, have a business breakup." Um, and
Okay.
and like she wanted me to buy her out.
Hold on.
And
Let's pause right there. How long had you
yeah,
been together?
yeah, like 3 years, three, 4 years
Okay.
probably. Yeah, yeah, like three
Okay.
years. I'd say 3 years, 3 years
Okay.
probably.
Okay. 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 All right. That's something. That's not like she was there 3 months and said, "Buy me out." Okay. Go ahead.
No, no, and she helped me establish the business, for
All right.
sure.
All
I
right.
mean, we
All right.
we we built it, we built it up to that level.
All right.
But I'm talking, we were
Yeah.
definitely sub
I was
500K,
going to say, what were you doing? Were you under a
revenue.
million still? So you're doing 500 grand. All right. She wants to
Oh yeah,
buy me out,
yeah.
Tom. Okay. What'd you say? Fuck off.
Now, if she's watching this, we are friends. But the story does go. I was like, I don't even know, and I was actually like, are you kidding me? Buy me out? Like, what?
Yeah.
You're like,
Yep.
what am I buying? Burden? I'm buying like
Yeah. There's
headache
nothing.
and
There's nothing to buy. I
tension,
mean,
and I'm
if
buying
you look
I'm
at
buying
if
problems.
if you look at the P&L statement, there's you're not. What are we buying here? What are you talking
I'm
about?
buying I'm buying stress and problems. And so I think her initial offer was 100K and mine was zero. I swear to God, I just said
Yeah,
zero.
of course. Yeah, zero.
And I wasn't being a jerk. I was just like, no,
No, no,
I really
that's
think
legit.
like it's zero because because what am I gonna inherit this nest of problems? Um,
I'm buying myself. It's
and
almost like I'm buying myself. Like I am the business, Sally, whatever her name was. Business.
yeah, and like
What do you?
also, if I had left to go get a job, I wouldn't have expected anything. I would have just been like, hey, listen, good luck. Sorry, I'm leaving you here, up Shit's Creek without a paddle,
You could have just
kind of
folded the
thing.
LLC and restarted.
I did, but we had a really, really, really big client who is still a client today. And I just didn't want to get into that, like, oh,
I see.
I
Okay.
have to have a waiting period of
Okay. Okay. Okay.
number of
Okay.
months,
All right. All right.
So ultimately what we settled on, and I'm fine with this, was it was basically like, hey, let's look at what's in the bank. Let's look at what's in receivables. Let's put some estimate on like the 5 computers we have here that are, are sort
Okay.
of like our property, and let's split it down the middle. So it ended up being
All right. That's fair.
way less than that, something like 40K or something like
Okay,
that.
good. Let's just pause for the listeners. One of the
Yeah,
key things that we've had so many entrepreneurs, and I'm an entrepreneur too, so we have a ton of experience at this stuff. I'm not an operating agreement expert, but I've done the dance plenty of times. I would just I'd like to make some recommendations here and then get your thoughts too. In general, I recommend setting up something that as the vesting schedule happens, first of all, a vesting schedule. Secondly, there's got to be some sort of clawback rules around, hey, if you take off, okay,
yeah,
you're not just gonna hang on to that full so-called vested percentage. There's going to be some rules around it that allow me to grab some of that back because I'm not going to just stay here while you just take off and walk away with 50% and then demand
yeah,
that I send you quarterly checks from now until eternity. Like, no, we're not doing that. And so,
right.
people really on the operating agreement have to set up what I call when the shit hits the fan and the breakup happens, what does it look like? And that needs to be spelled out on the
Yep,
operating
yep,
agreement thoroughly. But go ahead.
yep. Well, a couple things. One, like plan as if the breakup is going to happen, right? Because
Exactly. Exactly.
that's another thing, right? Like we're talking about this operating agreement, and we're like,
Yeah.
ah, we're best friends, right? I mean, we weren't best friends, but we're like, we're friends. We're
Mm.
going to break up forever, right? No, nothing's forever. So
Yeah.
just kind of just go in with the assumption that like, yeah, this could get messy, right? And so
Yes.
you need to
Yes.
look at it through that lens. And I would say like, don't have one person. What happened in my situation was my partner took the lead in getting the finding the lawyer, getting the agreement drafted. And I just was like, so
Where do I sign?
I was so blasé. Exactly. I was like, where do I sign? Right. I would recommend don't do that. Right. Like even I would even recommend like each person has their own counsel. That might be a little overkill, but like, or
Yeah.
at least have a
No.
family member or someone,
Good
someone who
idea.
can like be
Good idea.
your advocate. Right.
Good
Because
idea.
like
Good idea.
you're two different people and you just need to like don't take anyone's word for it. um and if like they engage the lawyer, then is the lawyer technically, I don't know, like where does their allegiance
Yeah.
lie? So like just make sure that like you're covering yourself and that you're having somebody explain to you exactly what everything is.
Good stuff, Tom. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, appreciate you sharing that. Okay, good advice for listeners. All right, so so she goes away, and then you're like, okay, I'll just run this by myself or whatever.
Yes.
Tell us what happens next.
Okay, so that weekend I said I'm probably going to shut this down because I don't want, I was the creative director, I was a designer, I was a developer. I couldn't even tell you how to pay our rent or how to pay a single vendor, right? So I was like, oh
You weren't ops and finance and accounting and all the rest. You weren't any.
no. So I was like, oh God. I was like, I don't even know if I can do this. So what I ended up doing was we had an accountant who at that point was just doing our taxes, and he helped us set up our S
Okay.
corp.
All right.
But he was being used at a very low level. I immediately like was like, Steven, I can't do any of this stuff. And actually his name's Steven. I'm not.
Okay.
I was
Okay.
like, Steven, I can't do any of this stuff. I need you to like step in and just
Help me.
do this. And
Help me.
so I ended up, obviously I had a lot of savings from my partner's salary. So
Oh,
I went into a deeper engagement with my accountant, who really became our bookkeeper
I
and
see. Okay.
accountant. And so
I
that
see.
was the immediate, and he also kind of became the liaison between like, you know, at that point you're getting stuff in the mail from New York State,
Yeah.
and I'm just like,
No.
I'm trying to work on projects. So it was like I could just scan stuff and send it to him and not worry about it. That was like the first and best. That was like the best thing I did right away. It was like, okay,
Great
like
move.
I just
Good
need to
move.
get this stuff off my plate. I can't
Good
be
move.
worrying about this
Yep.
stuff. So that was number one. Um, but I'd also say at the same time, it wasn't until years later that we actually engaged a CFO, like a fractional CFO. And I can talk
Okay.
about that later, but that was totally different than like an accountant and bookkeeper is giving you like data on like basically what has happened, whereas like the CFO can give you the fractional CFO that we engage still to this day can give you that sort of forward looking
Yep.
strategy. um yeah, so that was anyway, just like unloading that was a big one. Unloading all that financial stuff was really, really, that was the big one.
Any employees besides you and the guy you were paying, you and the accountant?
I had one employee, and that was another one. That was a funny one where I had to bring him out for drinks one night and basically be like, "Hey, look, so like, can you stay with me? Like, I promise I'll make it worth it to you because like she's leaving, and now it's going to be just the two of us." So he was like, "Yeah, cool." So he stayed, but then we did end up bringing on some contractors right away. So like, basically, this was 2014. In short order, I had a new office, and I had one full time employee, and I had three, I'd say, full time contractors, right?
Okay.
Just within like
All right. All right.
all
And
of
you're
all of a
doing
sudden, yeah.
and you're
So
doing 700. You doing 1 million yet, or where
I
you
was
at
doing
there?
about no, I was doing about 5 to 7 at this
Okay.
point, right? Like between five
Married
and
yet or
seven.
still single?
Married. Yep, married at this point, and actually with my second kid on the way. In
Oh,
2014.
wow.
Yep,
Okay. Okay.
yep, yep, yep.
There's some risky slash scary slash. Hey, let's
Yeah,
get married. Let's have kids. I don't know if this business is gonna make it. My partner left.
yep. And believe me, I was also. This is funny. My office we moved into was a printer closet. Like we were in a WeWork, and then my friend on 28th Street was like had this big kind of like loft and was like, "I got space for you here if you want." And he showed me this room that like literally had a printer in it and it had a window. And I was like, I can do this. I was like, how much?
Okay.
He's like 1,200 a month. I was like, man.
1,200. Jesus
But it was
Christ.
like it was. I mean, I'm telling you, we were in the middle of New York City. Like I had six desks, because I had come from a WeWork, right, where they're like tucking the desks in, and these guys had this giant like printer room, and I was like, I can fit six people in here easily. So I like really was cutting
I
down.
love
I was
that.
cutting
I
down on my
love that.
costs. Yeah, cutting down costs, and that year too, separate, but that year I got audited by the Department of Labor.
Oh,
That
nice.
was, yeah, yeah. It was
Nice.
like there was a
Oh,
lot going on.
wow. Wow. Okay. Now, are you, so you, do you still have the two? How many kids do you have now?
I have two daughters. They are now 13 and 10. So it's
They're, they're how old?
yeah, 13 and 10.
13 and 10. Oh man. Oh, you're hitting you're hitting the times where it could get scary. You're like the whole puberty slash, yeah. Ooh,
Yes, yes,
yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And also there's just like, I was thinking about this today. There's a lot less, and this is okay, and this is the way it should be, but as an entrepreneur, it's a lot harder to find time around the edges to do your work, right? Like I'm sort of looking at my schedule, I'm like, oh man, like I've got practice pickup, and then I got to help my older daughter like make sure she's got her homework, and I got to get them fed, and it's like, man, by the time I'm done with all that stuff, like it's gonna be 8 o'clock, and I'm gonna be like ready for bed. So yeah, the older, I mean, it's different, right? Like, but when they're babies, on the other end, when they're babies, you feel like you've gone to hell and back by the time 9 o'clock rolls around and you're going to work. So I don't know.
Are you still married?
No, I'm not. I am divorced. And
Uh,
in
uh,
another, I am in a committed relationship, but
I see you're in
I
a
am
commit.
married.
Okay. Do you have the daughters? Or you get them like do you have like
Yeah,
weekends? What do you
half
got?
and half. Yep. No, no, half and half. I get them half the week. She gets them half the week, and we live near each other, so it's amicable and it's been good.
Okay. Okay. That's cool. All right. Very good. So, all right. So as the business moved along, but you like hurdles and challenges, don't you? So at some point in
I
your,
hate them. No, I hate them. They
at
just
some
keep
point in
coming my
your
way.
business, so at some point in the business, you get divorced and you're writing her a check for half too. You like to give away half a few.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. 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 Luckily, I avoided that. We ended up like, working things out with properties and all that. But
Okay.
like, I retained the
Do you know
business.
how many
So
you know how many business owners slash entrepreneur friends I have that have gotten divorced, and I just give them shit all the time. And by the way, I've been divorced too, but it was before I started Riderflex, and so
yeah, yeah.
I never had to get divorced and then talk about okay, how much is the company worth, blah blah blah.
Yeah, yeah. Also, I mean, I have friends whose spouse like works in the business and kind of has from the beginning too, right? And so that becomes really, really, really hairy.
I was just having a meeting with a lawyer friend of mine who he's 59, I think, and he's got several LLCs. He's got a bunch of shit going on. And I was talking to him and he's like, I'm getting divorced, man. I was like, what? I was like, oh damn, really? He goes, yeah. I said, okay, yeah, that's gonna be $1 million check. And he goes, 1 million? He goes, no, 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 way more than that.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, ouch.
Yeah,
Anyway,
but it is kind of one of those situations too where I'm like, what is this company worth? I'm like, come on.
yeah, it's not worth that. Come on.
You want,
What are you talking about?
you want half of my stress? Fine, you can have it.
Okay. So, all right. So the divorce place sucked though, but now you met somebody else. She's go, what's this new, tell me about your new partner. What's she do? Is she a lawyer? That would help.
No, it's actually pretty interesting. We dated in college,
Whoa. You
and
looked out. She looked you up on Facebook. She saw you were getting divorced. She pinged you.
yeah, we were a thing in college. I mean, for real. Like, I mean, we were 18 in love, and it was awesome. And
Ah,
we broke up for various reasons. I think we were just too young to
yeah. Cause you
be.
were 18. I mean, just,
Yeah, we're too young. We're too young.
yeah.
Um, went our separate ways. I reconnected with her maybe 2 years ago. Through business, actually. We got an inbound through our website
Oh,
for some healthcare company needed a
wow.
rebrand. And I didn't know the name of the person that reached out. I looked them up. I looked them up just to see like, okay, is this a potential client? And yeah, the face is staring at me on the screen. This ex-girlfriend of mine. I'm like, what
Yeah.
is this?
Well, yeah. Oh, hey.
Uh, I mean, we went through the whole vendor, like she wasn't really involved in the whole process of us going through. They were going through a rebrand, and we went through the vendor or the partner selection process, and ended up winning the project. And it was, I mean, it's funny because the first intake call we had with them, I was like, I don't know if she's going to show up on this call. I was kind of like freaking out.
Oh,
And
so you hadn't talked to her. You hadn't actually talked to her one on one yet. I see. Okay.
no, no, it wasn't
All right.
until I mean, I was telling her part. I'm like, I know her, right? I'm like, I know your CEO. She's like, oh yeah, how? And I was like, we went to college together,
Oh,
and then
she's the CEO.
my current partner was the CEO. I was
Of
dealing with like the president, right? Like
ah,
this other person was vetting branding partners.
okay, all right.
So when we won the project, I said, "Hey, can you connect me with Vanessa?" Is her name, and she did, and we had coffee, and the rest is history. But it's crazy. We got married the same year. Our kids are the same ages. She's an entrepreneur. Um, we're
Cool.
both also sober, which is a whole other thing. So
Oh,
that's
whoa. We're going deep on this show, Tom.
yeah.
Okay. Whoa. There
Oh,
was there was there some all right. So what was the let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. So was that part of the reason you got divorced? Was there an addiction that just crumbled everything? Or tell me what happened?
yeah. I'd say I'd s- I wouldn't
It was
say it
part of it.
crumbled everything, but it was like
Part of it.
yeah, it was definitely part of it. It was definitely part of it.
Alcohol or other stuff.
Yes, yeah. No, just alcohol. Yeah, man.
Mm.
I just it is. It's just something that well, look. I come from a big Irish American family. Half of them are sober. The other half should be, is the way I put it. And so
Okay. So good.
I went I went down
Uh,
that path, and yeah, man. I mean, COVID and being at home, and it just like I everything just got super concentrated and worse, and and suddenly I was drinking way more than I
how
ever
long you
imagined
been,
I would
what
be.
how many what's the what do they call it, the coins or whatever? How long you been sober?
2.5 years.
2.5 years without a drink?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. What are your vices now, Tom? What do you like? You got to have something. What is it? Cheese? Is it bread? Is it like you got to have some sort of habit? Oh, okay.
It's so bad for you. It's so bad for you.
Uh,
That and I'll tell you what though, Steve, I've reclaimed my evenings back. So because I'm not like, I'm not passing out on the couch and then not remembering. So
yeah,
I'm just I'm a lot of content, right? A lot of TV, movies. Like I'm a big horror movie fan, so
yeah,
like
cool. Yeah,
I'll fill
cool.
my time doing a lot of that.
All
So
right.
yeah, just entertaining myself
Plus
really
you
with
got two preteens, so that'll keep you
yeah,
busy.
yeah, exactly.
Okay,
And
tell me.
the nice thing is I'm present for them, right?
Yeah. No, I think it's cool. Thank you for sharing. I want to so for the listeners, let's northstreetcreative.com is the website, right?
Yep.
Okay. And it's when you tell people about the company, do you say North Street or do you say North Street Creative?
I say North Street.
Yeah. Okay. I like it. Give us the elevator pitch as the company stands now. Like, go ahead. Give it to us.
Yeah, sure. We're at an interesting moment, so I'll cover kind of where we are and where we're going. So North Street's a branding and creative agency. We are brought in moments of transition or transformation by clients to just make sure that that's is as successful a transformation as it can be.
So
And
not
they're
so
always
so not in the beginning, transition or change, not startup.
Oh, well, I mean, transition to me could mean, we're going from two guys in a conference room with an idea
Okay. All right.
yeah. So I would
All right.
definitely
All
cover
right.
that in
Okay. All right.
there. Yeah. So launch, spinoff, merger, new marketing director, new CEO, new direction, new products,
All
that
right.
sort of stuff. And the idea, and so what we do is just we are both strategic and tactical, meaning we have a whole branding end, which is like, we can help companies develop their name, their sort of, their pillars, their communication pillars, like how they talk about themselves and how they talk to their individual audiences.
Okay.
Um, we'll call that the verbal identity sometimes, and we can then develop what they look and feel like, right? So then that becomes this holistic thing of like, this is how we talk, this is how we look, um, and these are the messages we're putting out into the world. And then tactically, we execute that with website design and development, and then campaign design and development, investor decks, business collateral, event trade show materials, that sort of thing. And the clients that we work with are we're business to business, and so institutional financial services is a big one. So investment banks and hedge funds and things like that. Then we also work with more general professional services, so like accounting and law firms, and then healthcare and nonprofit. So those four buckets are kind of where we operate. We don't do things like I don't sell sneakers on e-commerce websites. I don't run social media campaigns um for whoever,
So
right? For
no social media. No. Okay.
Nope.
But
Nope.
websites, yeah. Websites, yes.
Yeah, I mean, so look, it's like names, logos, the visual brand, websites, and really anything then that your brand goes on.
Okay. Okay. What about what about SEO and SEM? Paid Google ads or no?
We don't do that, but we bring partners in for that. And by that I mean we don't do it, and we don't do it on an ongoing basis. We will bring an SEO consultant in when we're doing a redesign of a
Okay.
website because we just want to
Okay.
make sure that we're not breaking anything.
I got you. Okay, very good. You talked about industry targets. How about size? Are we small, medium, large, companies all over?
So middle market, and the way I'll define that might mean different things to different people, but I'd say between 10 and 200 million is our sweet spot of revenue.
Okay.
Of the
Okay.
company has either 10 to 200 million, but occasionally we'll work with the enterprise client, but
Okay.
those are sort of further and farther between.
10 million because you need to be big enough to pay me. 200 million is usually the max because after that you have your own people to do it.
100%. 100%.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
How big?
You're yeah, you have a team the size of my company internally, probably.
Yeah. How big is the company is team wise, by the way? You want to share?
Yeah, we're 13 people. We're hiring for an account manager right now, so that'll be 14, I believe, in this quarter. Yeah, and it's a great team. We went in pre-COVID. We were all of us, and at the time, I think it was 7 or 8 of us, were in a single room in the South Street Seaport neighborhood of New York because we were a traditional brick and mortar business. And sort of COVID hit, we started hiring outside of New York City and never really looked back. So we've
okay.
got people in California, the Midwest, South America. We've even got someone in Africa.
Are you 100% owner or have you taken on investors or partners or what's the makeup now of the cap table?
Still 100, baby. Still 100.
Yeah.
But
Okay. Yeah.
that said, I mean, I've got the sort of dilemma, the owner's dilemma right now, where I really do have like a key person who is amazing,
I
and
got you.
I got to think about.
Have they said, where's my equity?
Maybe they've hinted at hinting at it.
These are all fun conversations. Another good advice for the listeners. You know, I've always be stingy with equity, for the
Yeah.
most part, I think is my general piece of advice. However, if you have a long-term player, sure, try to do something for them. But I like the clawback. Hey, by the way, if you leave, I get this back, just so you know.
Yeah, I mean, like we said before, like you just have to operate under the understanding that this is potentially going to come to an end, and it might be an
Yes,
ugly end. And so,
exactly.
even though things are copacetic now, like we're great, we're
Yeah,
getting along. Like, yeah, of course I want you in on this, and it's like,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
the best intentions, right?
Best intentions. Okay. Thank you for sharing that about the company. One more question about the company. Then I want to ask you about AI in the last few
Yeah,
minutes.
sure,
Uh,
yeah,
I have had a shit ton of marketing guys on the show. Okay. I mean, we've had like 500 guests. I bet 100 of them have been marketing. No, I don't know. I don't know. I'm
yeah.
exaggerating, but there's been a ton. Why North Street? Why North Street? What is special about North Street versus all these other marketing firms I've had on the show? Tell me, Tom, what is it? Besides the fact that you're cool and I like you. Besides that.
Well, that was kind of going to be my answer. That I'm cool. No, that I think that my vibe is the company's vibe, and I think and what I mean by that is
Okay.
I've been around long enough now. Like when I was first starting out my business, look, you sort of like you'll do anything for anybody, right? Like I'm just trying to pay the bills, and I'm also trying to figure out who I am. right? In the beginning, it's like, yeah, I don't know, we'll do event stuff. We'll do software. I mean, we were doing like, we were building SaaS things at one point. We were doing live event like visualization, and we were doing it for consumer brands, right? And so I think, but at this point, 14 years later, I know what we're really good at. I know what we're not really good at. I'm not going to tell anybody that we do stuff that we don't do. If I have a partner that I need to bring in, I am absolutely straightforward about it. But I think the biggest thing is like, I don't, I don't enter a conversation about new business, meaning like with a prospect, a prospective client, I don't enter a conversation being where, which I used to, being like, oof, like I need to lock this in by October 27th so that the contract can sign and those numbers get counted into October and October's numbers are hit. I guess I just have enough experience and just maybe battle scars to know that like, look, I approach the conversation like, hey, this might be a good fit and it might not be. And then let's just figure that out. And what you're asking for might not even be what you really need. And let's talk about that too, you know? And it's just like, and so I end up referring a lot of stuff out because it's just like, yeah, look, you know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you're not, we don't do that, or you're too small for us, or like that's maybe even more too sophisticated for us, or like, you know, e-commerce. We don't do e-commerce. I hate it. We did it a long time ago. I just didn't like it, and now I don't do it. So if people ask us for it, I'm not going to pretend we do it. And so I think that enables me to have these just very open conversations, and I think people are able to pick up on that. That like, I don't, you know, I'm not. It'd be great to work together. It'd be amazing. But also, if we don't, we don't. And like, you know,
Yeah,
maybe
exactly.
I can help you. Maybe I can help you find the right partner or point you in the right direction. And so I just think that that permeates through the whole company, meaning that like I think that that's how we make you feel. And so I would hope. I mean, with me, it's definitely not going to happen. But I would hope that with any of my people, you're not feeling like we're selling you a solution that we've pre-prescribed because it's what we sell, or that we're just going to say we can do something because we want the revenue.
I like that, Tom. Thank you for sharing that. You know, I was our day job at Riderflex is we're a recruiting and staffing firm, and I was just doing a sales pitch meeting in person late last week with a guy, and I had a very similar conversation. I'm like, look, man, I mean, you know, I didn't say it exactly like this, but basically I was like, look, nice to meet you. This is what we do. This is what our fee is. You're cool. I'm happy to work with you if you want us. If you don't, I'm
Yeah,
busy. You know, nice to meet you. I got, you know, here it is. And one thing he said too, he's like, well, what's the term of the contract? And I said, you know, his name's not Johnny, but I'll use Johnny. I was like, Johnny, I just look, we can sign whatever we want, but if we suck and we don't do a good job, you're just not going to pay us. So there is no contract. It's just month to month. Well, I'm going to work for
yeah,
you as long as you're happy. And when you're not happy, call me and stop paying me. Like there's no, you know, I'm not going to sign a 12-month contract. What am I going to do? Sue you and make you pay me to use my service? Like there's
right. Which is a weird norm, but it's disarming, right, Steve? It's
totally.
disarming. I think
Yeah.
people are like,
He was like, oh,
oh,
cool.
yeah, you're not trying to fuck me? Okay, cool. Like, I'm good.
Anyway, hey, last thing, I wanted to spend more time on this. I know we're almost out of time, but I'd gotta just get your quick thoughts. We're recording this on the 15th of October, 2024. AI is all the rave, right? It's just, you know,
Yep.
scaring everybody. Well, some people are scared. Some people are, I think some people actually don't know what's going on and they just kind of
Hmm.
got their head in the sands. I think the people that are watching it are like, ooh, I don't know, this could be a little scary here.
Yep. Yep.
Where are you, Tom, with are you nervous about what it might do to marketing agencies? You're just like, no big deal. Just what's your general approach regarding AI as it relates to your business? Big question. I know. Probably should have
I'm
saved more
not
time.
I'm not scared of it, but we need to be mindful of it. And it is going
Okay.
to change it's going to change everything. And we're just not sure like how much, yeah, we're just not sure at what pace, right? So it's like if you look at like I saw this thing the other day online, like these kids don't know how to do cursive anymore. And it's like, well, who cares? You
who
know, and
cares?
I think that there's going to be things that like AI just replaces that like are skills now that just don't matter. And like, well, I just don't think we know what those are yet totally. And it's going to be so like a lot of things are going to change. And I think you're going to see, I mean, just small examples. Like we use a transcription service sometimes for when we do meetings, we'll record it.
Yeah.
And we used to go upload it and a human would sit there and type it out. And now like
Yes.
we get the AI version in 2 seconds and it's
Yep.
serviceable. So like that has changed that whole just
Hmm.
that little thing right there. Um, and you know, there's things like, I mean, I'll tell you, this is another example. We had to put a headshot of our design director on our website the other day, and I I grabbed her photo. I grabbed a photo of it had a background on it and everything. I just put it. I said, "Hey, take the background off of it and just
Yep.
give it to me." Happened in 1 second. Whereas when I worked at a magazine, we used to send those out to like a whole separate like factory, right? So like of like a computer farm to like take out the background, and now we can do it instantly. So things are changing fast. I think here's my thought: like we're dipping our toes into it, we're using it, but we're using it like what I don't want to do is I don't want to spend a bunch of time and money investing in um, tools or experiments of our own. I think what's happening is there are companies like like GitHub, like probably like Figma and Webflow. There are these software companies that are starting to integrate AI into their tools. So I guess what I'm saying is like I'm not right now interested in like yes, I could think of 1,000 things that we could use AI for, but I'd have to kind of build it.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
our play right now is to wait until is to watch as AI is integrated into the tools we're already using because they have entire software teams behind them. They have investment capital, right? Like so
Yep.
they're gonna start layering this stuff in, and it already is getting layered into our tools. So like GitHub has GitHub Copilot for coding, and it's those things are just gonna start to get into our workflow anyway.
They already are. They
And
already are.
yeah, they are, and so that's exciting, right? And so that's the take that's the path I'm taking now, rather than I did think at one point about building our own kind of custom tools, and I was like, you know what,
Yeah.
like
By the time you
someone's gonna
by the time you pay for it and get it built, OpenAI will just release it. It'll just be part
or
of the
Adobe, yeah, exactly, or Adobe is just gonna turn it on, and suddenly all that
exactly.
work that I did is just
Yeah.
down the drain. So
Yeah.
yeah, but it's exciting. It's exciting, but look at it's exciting, but it's also the change it's gonna usher in is scary, but it's scary, but it's only scary when you look at it from the lens of today. If you look at through the lens of 10 years ago, some of the technological advancements that were made, between then and now, it's like those would have been scary at the time. I mean, I remember when
Good point.
Squarespace came out,
Yeah. Right.
like that's
Yeah.
going to
Right.
destroy us,
Yeah.
and it
So you don't. So last question on this. So you're right. I totally agree. It is scary slash exciting, cool, all at the same time. Um, so when you see all these reports like, oh, 50% of the jobs are going to go away and AI and robots are going to do everything and everybody's going to be on the universal basic income, blah, blah, blah. Are you like, no? What do you think?
look, I maybe this is my age, but I, you know, look, I think that there might be a future where, if we look back at sort of consumer products got they became, after, I think it was after World War II, mass production of consumer goods became a thing. They
Mm-hmm.
became,
Mm-hmm.
mostly like machine made or automated made, right? Like just these, like, let's just take Oreos and
Yeah, whatever.
everything, just like
Everything.
just like
Yep.
mass produced, right? By like processes that are mostly automated. Um, and then music went onto CDs, and then it became onto MP3s, and then it became streaming. Um, I think where I'm going with this is that like 2 years ago was the biggest year ever for vinyl record sales, right? And then you've got farmers markets and like these sort of like Trader Joe type places that are selling like way more artisanal, handcrafted, human curated um, experiences or products. And I think it's going to be. I think I'm hoping for a future where it's a little more like that, where it's like, okay, there's the mass produced stuff, and it's fine and it's good, and some of it's really great for most people. But there is also going to be that slice of the population that wants that like handmade, human made kind of like really special and unique because a human did it, or more tangible kind of experience.
Will that slice, though, that you just said, be enough to keep 50% of the jobs? That's the real question. So I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, man.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Like
I don't know.
we're witness to it all. It's going to be
We
crazy.
are living, we're going to live it, bro, which is kind of exciting.
Yeah.
I've had people on the show that are on both sides of the fence, by the way. You know,
Yeah.
some people are like, it's all over the place. I mean, who knows? Who knows? Hey, we get to live it. I think
let's put it this way. Like who would have thought 10 years ago, let's see, that would have been, no, 20 years ago, '04, that you wouldn't that you would be using this little TV screen in your pocket to like get onto an airplane and then buy the things that you're buying on the airplane. And it's like, we can't even imagine what's coming.
totally
right?
agree. That's a lot of people have said that, like, you can't imagine the jobs that'll be created because we can't even you can't even foresee that.
What's funny?
It's easy to look at the jobs that'll be eliminated. That's
Right.
easier.
Right.
It's harder to look.
Right.
It's harder to imagine the new ones being created.
Right. Right. It reminds me of movies like, you look at a Star Wars movie that was made in the '70s, and they're using like walkie-talkies, or they're using things that have to be plugged in because they couldn't even imagine that there was this like internet wireless data, so like they had a disc and they had to go get the disc from the big like planet in the sky. It's like, why is there a disc? Like they couldn't even imagine like that the technology.
Exciting time to be alive, for sure.
For sure.
Tom,
For sure.
Thank you so much for being on the Riderflex show. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man, this was fun. For sure. Thanks.